Mostly here. So good evening to everybody on, good evening to everybody in the room. This is our April meeting, the last in-person meeting we'll be having, and I'm sorry we started a little late, but we'll get right straight to our business.
Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, we have a plant sale going on, so I thought it would be appropriate to go over again how to plant your plants, how to establish your plants, how to evaluate your plants, so that when you get them, you'll be ahead of the game. You can already have your bed prepped, because we're not picking them up until the 15th, so you got at least 10 days to prep the areas. Native plants don't really need an amendment soil when you plant them. However, I've been planting for, 43 years, and I've learned that during the establishment period, from the time you take it out of the pot and put it in the ground until it can do everything on its own, is called the establishment period. During that time, water is very critical. So I live in a sand hill, so I have nothing but pure sand. If I find organics, I'm like really happy, because you don't find much out there. It's pure sugar sand. So I found that amending the plant in the beginning, during that establishment period time, the amendment normally is organic. We're pretending tonight. This is yard soil. It's not Miracle-Gro potting soil. And this is compost. Okay, so that's what I would use, is the earth, ground, and compost. So when you evaluate your plant, I'm going to show you on here first, because this is not a native plant. This is a pineapple sage, but they were so beautiful, and I love this plant. And like I was telling them, it's edible, not only the flowers, but the leaves too, and the stems. But when you evaluate your plant root system, there's some people that will really, really torture their roots. They do the butterfly effect, but it's not done properly. All the butterfly effect is you take your 2 fingers or 2 hands, putting your fingers up into the root and pulling it out gently, not ripping it off the side. Just open up the center, turn it, and do the same thing. So you'd have 2 openings on the bottom, so that when you plant that, the roots are able to escape this container growth that's on here now. And a lot of times you'll find plants that are twining all the way around, and sometimes you have to loosen the sides. But for this one, all I do is just open that center up, just like that, and do nothing more. You evaluate your plant, take off any yellow leaves, make sure it's nice and clean, no leaves in there that could have funguses, and then you would already have your location evaluated and prepared. Always water your planting area the night before, the morning of, so that the ground is wet. Always water your plants before you plant them, so that you're not planting a dry plant. 2 reasons. If you don't get that root ball wet enough when you're planting it, it'll be dry in the center, and over time you think your establishment, and what's happening is it's drying out from the center out. And the earth is going to wick the soil, the water away from your plant roots anyway, so you're going to have the earth pulling the moisture out, and the center, trying to get it into the center if it's dry. So your best bet is to make sure that they're good and wet. And you never plant a plant without a hose, and you never use a hose without a cutoff. If you don't use a cutoff and the water police come by, they will fine you. So when you're not using it, turn the cutoff off. When you're going to use it, don't put it in the water ground and then open it, because you got built up pressure. Open it to the side, make sure nobody's standing there, and then use it. So what you want to do, and I'm going to show you exactly how to plant a plant. These are natives. These are Coreopsis. This is Gaillardia, or blanket flower tick seed. They're a little harder to clean. You notice, see all the black and brown around the edge? That's because they're constantly putting out new leaves from the inside. And so you want to get as much of that off as possible. The reason is, this is where your funguses begin. They begin in debris that's left around the plant, and or built up mulch around it. So we're going to talk about that too. So you get it good and clean, making sure all the leaves that were broken are off. And it takes a little bit of time, but it's so much better for the plant if you can get it healthy before fungus sets in. Because in the summertime, you deal with funguses off and on and various types of plants. Coreopsis is one that can get funguses, so can the Gaillardia, but they're fantastic wildflowers. But you have to understand that these babies love babies, so they reseed a lot. So you're constantly going to have seedlings coming up in your garden year round and even into the next year. So you're going to want to move them if they come up in the wrong place. Very easy once you recognize what they look like as a baby. You can go in with your little trowel, pop it underneath, hold it in your hand, make a little hole, put it in, water it, keep it watered for a couple weeks, every 3 or 4 days, and it's going to wilt because you took those roots out of the ground. So don't worry about wilt too much in the very beginning if you establish it properly. So once you get that out, then you want to evaluate, or cleaned up, you want to evaluate its root system. This is also a very good root system. You can see where the fibrous roots are running around the pot, but they're not twining tight. So this is really good, and I wouldn't do too much more than just that little butterfly opening on the bottom. And they call it a butterfly because you actually have 4 lobes like the wings of the butterfly, the front hind legs and the front legs. Then you're going to dig your hole. Of course, you probably in the ground use a shovel, but since demonstration, our soil is loose, but you would use a shovel. Put your soil back a little bit from the hole so that when you mix your amendment in, you're not knocking this soil down into the hole, because you got to mix that amendment 50-50 with what you're taking out of the hole. So once you have your hole, check your depth. You want to plant it level with the earth soil. Too deep, you're going to suffocate it. Over time, the dirt's going to wash in there. The roots need oxygen exchange, and that's what they get at the surface. So with that being planted, even with the ground, those roots are right there. Of course, you got other roots that are anchoring, but roots have different purposes. Some feed, some anchor, and some bring in oxygen. So they have duties that they have to perform, and if you get them started on the right path in the beginning, you're going to be much happier with it. I forgot to do one thing. Before you put the plant in, like Mose, imagination, fill the hole up with water first. So that now you got wet earth, water in your hole, wet plant. Good start. Then when you're going to bring your amendments out, you put it right on top of your soil you took out of the hole. Okay? Then you're going to mix as you're putting it in. Mix it up, put it in, plant this little plant, I'll do about half of it. Then put your hose in there and get that good and set in there so that there's no air pockets, because air pockets, just like the dry center, will do the same thing. Your plant will die over time, but it takes a long, long time, so you won't notice it. You won't even know what caused it. All of a sudden you'll have a dead plant. So you want to make sure that you water it in really good. After you fill it, backfill it to the halfway mark, firm it up with your fingers, firm it up, and then mix that up again, and go ahead and plant it to the level of your pot. Any questions there?
So again, if I'm in sand, I'm going to mix compost, you said, and what else?
The sand.
And the sand.
So your earth soil, whatever you're pulling out of the earth.
Okay.
The reason is these pots come with a lot of good soil. They use a good mixture of soil. It's got a lot of peat moss in it. But these plants are grown on automation, so they're getting regular water, not when they go out and water. It's set on a timer, and they're watered regularly, they're fertilized regularly, and they're spaced as they go. If this wasn't spaced, you'd have a plant, and you do see these from time to time from nurseries, where the plant comes up like this and then it branches out. It's because it was too tight next to another plant. So they do, you can see how nice spread this one has. A lot of new growth on the inside, and all these tips will have flowers on them. If it was the other way around, you'd have flowers on the very top and nothing coming out the side. Once you put it in the ground, it will branch out that way. But if they properly grow it, you'll have a healthy plant. Okay? So then you finish setting that in there, firm it up, make sure that your soil is still the same level, and then you water it in again. This time you're not putting the hose down in the hole, you're watering it, so you might want to have a spray head so like it's raining on it. Do not rely on your irrigation to establish your plants. For the next 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the size of your plants, trees take even longer. They can take up to 3 months to establish. You want to water it on a regular basis. You don't want it to go totally to where it wilts all the way. And it'll tell you because these things are just sag. Then you've got to sit there with the water down and soak that root ball again from the top. And you don't know if you're getting it all the way to the bottom. So if you water it every, say, 2 or 3 days, depending on whether you put it in pure sun, part sun, or shade, depending on the plant, you want to make sure that it doesn't go to that wilt stage. So you're going to keep an eye on it. After it's established, I don't do anything with my flowers, Coreopsis, Gaillardia, any of those, unless there's a summer drought or a long period with no rain. And we've gone through that. Last year we went through it twice. So once you establish a plant, get properly planted, properly cared for during that establishment period, you won't have to baby it anymore. Okay? How many people just let their irrigation run? I know a lot of people try. There's companies that do that, companies that go around and plant places. They let the irrigation run and they don't use a hose when they're planting, and they wonder why 3 weeks later they have dead plants. Because they didn't give the plant its best start. So if you give it its best start, it's going to produce. Now, a plant has what's called a source sink, and the source is seeking that energy that the plant is making in its leaves through photosynthesis, sending food to the roots, pulling up water and nutrients from the ground. This happens in the leaves. So when you plant a plant, you're telling that plant to put out roots. So it may be a period of 2 to 3 weeks before it'll put out new blooms because the sink is those roots. When you trim a plant, the sink that's pulling the nutrients is the pruning cut to put out new leaves, break the nodes below the cut, and put out new branches and new leaves. When it's going to go to flower, your flowers is the sink. So that's going to pull all the energy to the flower. So once you plant your plant, you're going to have a period of lesser bloom, and then it'll go back into full bloom once the roots have established themselves into the ground. Everybody understand that? Do not fertilize your plant until it's in the ground to at least a month. And then I use organics or nothing at all. I use compost, I'll throw banana peels around, I'll throw eggshells around it. All that gives it calcium, potassium, which are the main 3 elements that a plant needs is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Magnesium, manganese, and potassium, calcium is also a large one, depending on the plant. So eggshells help a lot. It's a slow release of calcium, but plants require. They actually require 16 altogether. They get 3 from the air, and they get 13 from the ground. So 16 elements that they require. And that goes into boron and copper and molybdenum and all this other stuff. So they require very, very small amounts. So that's why in your fertilizer bag, you're going to see 3 numbers: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Nitrogen for growth, phosphorus for blooming and setting fruit, potassium for root growth and overall health. So in the state of Florida, you don't really need that middle number because we have plenty of phosphorus in our ground, and they are getting away from, you'll notice that you get a 21, 0, 16 on a bag of fertilizer for your lawn, because we don't need that phosphorus. And they're convinced in fertilizer companies over a lot of haggling and political and all this other stuff to take that number out of the fertilizer bag. So you won't see the middle number a lot, but if you see a bloom booster, it's going to have a big one in the middle, usually around 20 to 30. If it's a liquid, that's fine, because our elements are, most of them are mobile, which means they'll move through the ground. That's why people that fertilize their lawn every month is putting nitrogen into our water, drinking water, because the plants cannot take that much nitrogen every month, and because it's mobile, every time the irrigation runs or it rains, that nitrogen is going through the ground without anything taking it up. So that's why you don't put it on sidewalks or down drains, runoff drains, or leave it sitting on your sidewalk. You're going to see copper spots. You're going to see little brown spots come up as soon as the humidity gets up, which is about a half hour after you put it out. If you leave fertilizer bag open, you'll notice the next day that it's moisture in there. That's because all those chemicals are being released by the humidity. So if you have fertilizer left over, if you use fertilizer, make sure you put it in a plastic container with a good tight lid on it. Any exposure, it's going to start to release that chemical that's in those, generally clay or corn husk or in your fertilizer. There's very little element in your fertilizer. Most of it's a filler, like a clay or corn husk. Most of the corn husk are in your turf fertilizations. So a lot of people don't understand it. They think they're putting out all that fertilizer, and there's very little fertilizer in that bag. But what you want to stay away from is you don't want to use a 10-10-10 or 6-6-6 unless you're going to water it in immediately, because your nitrogen is also either time release, 50% organic, or it's urea that'll break down within the first amount of water on it. So a lot of people will burn their plants because they put too much fertilizer on them, or they'll fertilize the trees up at the trunk. Your roots are way out there, anywhere from 18 inches in from the drip line, which where the water would run off the edge of your plant, and 6 feet beyond if it's a tree. Even further, some of these big trees, their root systems can go a long, long way. Never fertilize at the trunk. All you're going to do is burn the roots that are there that have already done their duty and produced the hair roots to bring up the nitrogen or the nutrients and the water. So out just inside the drip line and outside the drip line 2 or 3 feet will fertilize your trees. Now, if you are in a turf area and you're not fertilizing, I don't really use fertilizer, but I want you to understand, if you do, how to use it. Never use any turf fertilization within 10 to 15 feet over water, like a pond or a lake or a canal. Well, that's most people's backyard. So these people that live on the canals and they have a very short backyard. But by the laws, the best practices in the state of Florida, you're not supposed to fertilize that 10 feet between the water and that 10 foot in, because it's just going to run off into the water and cause problems with the aquatic animals, the fish, all kinds of people. So you need to leave that as a border that you don't do anything to. Buy your fertilizers. A lot of times I'll use one that's either sulfur coated, which is the yellow looking ones, or there's one that's gray, that's a polymer coated. Sulfur coated will be released with the heat and the water. Polymer coated is released with the water and the heat, but it only releases at a certain temperature. So the polymer is better to use than the sulfur coated because it doesn't release in the wintertime because the temperatures are not hot enough. But your sulfur coated will release every time it gets water. So that's critical. And you'll see them sometimes in nurseries. You'll see little yellow beads, look like little beads in your soil. That's fertilizer. Okay, mulching, another place where people make their mistake. Never mulch right up to the trunk. Tree, shrub, flower, I don't care what it is. But you should mulch, especially during a period of establishment. I like leaf mold or oak leaves, and you're going to put it around the plant, but not up there in the center. The reason is it'll keep that center too wet, and flowers tend to get a disease called botrytis, and all of a sudden it'd be beautiful one day, and the next day it's laying out and it's all gray in the center and brown. It was a disease called botrytis that went in there and wiped it out. So you put your mulch out here. The reason that you would mulch, especially a new plant, is you want those roots to go out into that area around the plant. And with the sun making down on it, that area is going to get hot. And it can burn the surface roots that are supposed to do the oxygen exchange, so it can actually set your plant back. Also, it will, sunlight down on the soil will pull the moisture out, evaporate the moisture out of your ground. If it's slightly mulched, then there's not going to be that open ground for the sun to take the water out. So it's critical to mulch, but never up to the center. There is some plants that will get disease if you have citrus trees. Always have an area of open dirt around it once they're established. Never put mulch in there. And if you do mulch, stay 4 to 6 inches off the trunk, because they can get a disease called foot rot. And foot rot will take a citrus tree out in a heartbeat. So the best deal is to keep it away from the center. The other mulch that I like to use, and because these two are plentiful to me, is pine straw. Pine straw will let the moisture go water go in like when you water or when it rains, but it'll protect the surface from the heat. And it gives that aeration, so your roots are still gonna get that oxygen exchange. Okay, any questions on that?
I have a question. We talked about the diameter of the hole that you dig compared to the plant.
Right. A lot of people will dig a plant, a hole, same size as their pot, and literally stuff it in there. No. Twice the size. So this is considered a 4-inch pot. I go 8 inches across. So you got 4, well, actually I go probably 10 to 12 inches because you want to give that area. This is rich soil, and if you put this in sand, it's going to look out there and say, there's nothing for me to eat out there, so I'm not going. But if you mix it with that organic matter, with the earth soil, it has some of the stuff that's in here. So it will move out into that area, and once it's out in that area, it's adapted to a lesser soil as far as richness goes, and then it'll go out into the sand without a problem. Yes?
So you would modify those rules a little bit if you were just transplanting a plant from one part of your yard to the next, because it would just be the same soil.
It's the same soil, yes, but if you're gonna move a big tree, like a tree, let's say, 3 months before you wanna move it, you wanna do a root pruning. So you wanna go, depending on how tall the tree, if it's a 4-foot tree, you wanna go probably about that far from the root system, from the trunk, and dig a trench 4 inches down, all the way around. And when you go to move it, you're gonna dig below that, but what you'll notice is those roots that were cut 3 months before already have new roots starting, which are your hair roots, which are going to pick up that water easier. You can transplant a tree and just cut it off and move it the same day, but you're gonna have a real hard time establishing if it makes it at all. So little plants, especially herbaceous plants, which these are considered herbaceous, they're constantly putting out new growth, new stems, new whatever. They're easy to make cuttings. They can be moved, just dug up and moved. But what a lot of people don't realize is when they pull it up, the soil falls off the root, and then they just jam that root down like that. You need to dig your hole, make sure you're same level as the soil at the base of the plant where it came out of the ground, and you want to make a mound in the middle, and then put those roots around the mound so that instead of going this way, they're going this way. And make sure that that soil's up in there, and that's critical. You can take care of that with the hose. Just if your plant should sink below where it's planted at, just gently lift it up with the water in there until you get back to the right height, and then firm in soil around it after you have that mound in the middle. Yes?
What do you think of milorganite?
Milorganite? Milorganite is an organic septic sludge that's been treated and tested for any impurities or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You can still find items in it. I'm not going to say what, but whatever goes down in your mood, you're going to get out of that. You know what I mean? So you have to watch for that, but it's very safe. Do not breathe it. It is a septic sludge. It can harm your lungs. It can get in your eyes. So you want to make sure that you're taking it from the bag, step back, so when a puff of air comes up, like when you use lime or anything else, you don't want to breathe that because you're breathing in that stuff.
Oh, I know it stinks.
Yeah, it does stink, but not as bad as some stuff. Try fisher mulch, which is a great fertilizer, but every cat in the neighborhood is going to be able to see it because they think there's fish in your yard.
Yeah. So is the milorganite safe to use by the water on your grass?
Yes, it's been treated enough. It's not like it's pure feces or anything. It's been treated, and then they add stuff to it. So that's not an issue. You could probably, I know I've seen dogs eat it.
But it's safe for the water.
Yes, it's not going to hurt any organic stuff, any microorganisms or anything. Yes.
Well, following up on that, but don't we generally recommend to look like a buffer garden?
Right, I did talk about that. So you're going to get some leaching, but you want it to go right up to the water anyway, any fertilizer.
Even milorganite.
Even my overnight. A lot of times, it's going to get some, when we get rains, especially the last 2 rainstorms we've had, I know I've had 7 or 8 inches at my house. If you fertilized right before that, you probably had most of your soil wash off. So it's down by the canal anyway you're on a canal. So you don't want to put it out when there's a heavy, heavy rain. So I'm just going to mention this. I do not recommend using a weed and feed, but if you do use a weed and feed, they are two different procedures. If you have Bahia and you're using 2,4-D, Weed Be Gone or whatever, look at the active ingredients, say 2,4-B, 2,4-D, or B, atrazine. Atrazine can be safely used on St. Augustine grasses for weed control of broadleaf. If you have sandspurs, it's not going to kill it. It's only going to do broadleaf. So your weeds that the center midrib and the leaf veins go out from that midrib, those are considered broadleaf. If it's a grassy weed, your veins run vertical. Okay, so that's how you tell whether you have a grassy weed or you have a broadleaf weed. Atrazine will take care of broadleaf in your St. Augustine, but it will actually kill the Bahia because it has those vertical veins in it and can damage it. Probably won't kill the Bahia because that's a tough grass, but it will cause damage to it. But if you use 2,4-D on St. Augustine, chances are you're going to get some damage. But when you're putting atrazine out on your St. Augustine, you want to make sure that you water it in right after it's done. Okay, that activates the atrazine. It's in the upper level of your planting area, your lawn area, and it'll kill those weeds that it comes in contact with. To do Bahia, you need to make sure that there's moisture to ground. So right now, because we got that rain last couple of days, is a good time to put that out. But you don't water it in, and it has to stay dry for 24 to 48 hours, or it won't work. So people that put out their weed and feed the same as whatever they buy, it's not going to work. They're just wasting money, and that stuff is not cheap, especially now. I don't know anything that's cheap now. So I'm glad I don't use it. Okay, any more questions about any of that? Yes, sir.
Are those sandspurs, they're native plants too?
I don't think they are, but they're well established. I'd have to look that up. Sandspurs.
Oh, yeah.
They're not, are they native?
Oh, yeah.
What kills them?
Lime,
Yeah.
change of pH. Most of our soil is acidified, which means that on a pH scale, if you ever studied the pH scale, goes from 0, I think 14, with 7 being neutral. 80% of our plants, to 85 to 90% of them, will take an acidic soil. Azaleas, camellias, a lot of our trees, holly trees, love that acidic soil, so they want a 4 to a 4.5. Most plants can live in a 4.5 to a 6.5. Few plants want it above. If you ever plant a tomato plant, for 2 reasons, you want to plant it with lime. It likes an alkaline soil. Once you go above that 7, you're getting alkaline. And it needs it so it doesn't get end rot on the fruit, which is a calcium deficiency. So by using that lime, you're correcting that calcium deficiency before it comes. If you try to correct it after it comes, you're still going to have it up in the plant. So it's better to plant your tomato plants with a handful of lime in the soil around them. Okay, sandspurs, if you can get the pH up, but generally all of our soil that's natural soil are somewhere around a 4.5 to a 6.5.
Yeah.
So to do that, you have to add lime. But lime works very, very slowly, and you can only put out so much per year per area. And you'd have to look that up. I don't know what the guidelines are, but it's not something you can put on all the time. So changing the pH takes a lot of time. But if you're using pine needles or oak leaves in your plants when you establish them, when they break down, that makes the soil acidified. And that's the main reason why we have acidified soils in Citrus County.
So how much lime do you have to put out?
Oh, it's like pounds per acre, but, oh, you mean for the tomato plant?
No.
For the lawn? There's a recommendation on the bag. Generally, the most people that use that are farmers, because some of their crops prefer a higher alkaline, they call it sweeter soil. Acidified is sour, alkaline is sweet. In the lingo, I don't think any of it tastes sweet or sour.
What likes that, grains and things, or what likes?
Probably your grains and probably some of the melons,
Oh,
stuff like that. Tomatoes, of course. So they would highly line their fields before they put the tomato plants in. Yes, ma'am.
So what happens if you already planted this plant in the sand and all you did is pump it in there?
I would go out with a hose, I would go out with a hose and literally go down along the side, not with a jet, just a good firm,
Oh, I've been watering it every day, but
but you want to get down to the bottom.
yeah,
And then if you need more soil, you can pull some in from the edges or whatever to fill it back up. Because if you didn't water it properly, that soil's gonna settle.
but like I didn't put any compost, all I did was flop up the sand. Would it do any good to put some compost?
You
on
can,
the
what they call
top?
side dress, you can side dress it by putting it along the edge and watering that in.
Okay, and you can buy compost.
You can buy compost, mushroom compost is a good one, black cow,
Okay,
but you only want to do a thin layer.
okay.
So like a quarter of an inch, you water it in, and it depends on if it's herbaceous, you can do it probably once a month.
Okay.
Or you buy vegetables or herbs, you can do that. Shrubs and trees, I don't want to do it as much, they're not going to be as critical. If you can get the water down there, they're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
So, like, we use Miracle Grow, and you're talking about watering and only fertilizing like once a month. Is there a problem using Miracle Grow more than once a month?
Miracle Grow liquid feed? Well, the thing about liquid feed is it's only there for a temporary time while it goes through the soil. So using it once a month is not gonna hurt it. I would actually use it half strength because you don't want to have your plants rely on that once a month feed. If you go 50% of the recommendation and do it once a month, your plant's gonna be happy, but it's not gonna be absorbent. Because you can give a plant too much nitrogen and it can grow and then it won't flower.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with my lime tree starting to, it had nice leaves on it, and now it's starting to.
But
wither away.
now citrus trees need some amendments. Call up the county and have them mail you the nutrients for citrus trees. Or go by there, it's just down the road on 191. Or you can come to the demo garden cleanup in 2 weeks on a Saturday and help me clean up the garden, and I'll get in there and get you your fair forms for you.
So where is that? I mean, that cleanup.
You go up 44, which is the road out here, go up 44 to the racetrack, make a right-hand turn. You're gonna go down right before the school road where the street light, the street light is. Before the college, you're gonna make a right-hand turn into the government complex.
It's Sovereign Way.
Yes, what is it, Solver? Way, the name of the road. And when you turn into that government complex, the extension is right on the right side, where it shares the building with the health department,
Oh, okay.
and the garden's right behind it.
Oh, okay.
We can find that once in my list.
Okay.
And it's in a lot of need right now, and we have a Earth Day on the 23rd there through the county extension. If you're not doing anything, it's a great program to go out and see. And if you want, you can come help me on the setup with it, and we'll talk about native plants there. There's a garden there. I'm going to set up providing for wildlife, one of the 9 principles of the Florida Friendly. I'm going to actually build a little habitat for attracting animals, like birds and rabbits and stuff. We're going to have the tent set up, right, Athena?
Yeah.
We're going to have the tent set up with informational stuff that you can hand out. I'll have all my posters back there on the fence line, and I'll have a little scavenger hunt for the kids. It's going to be fun, and there's all kinds of things out there. There's all kinds of programs and setups, vendors, you get free stuff. It's a good time. I think it's 9 o'clock to 1, or at the one on the 23rd.
Is it on the Facebook page? I found it, it's on a website, and it was
Under the calendar.
So Anson's having theirs on the 16th. Don and I will both be speaking. Donna's gonna do What's Blooming, is that it?
No, I'm doing, pollinators. Both
Oh, pollinators, okay,
native
pollinators,
and non-native.
okay. And I'll be doing a class on pruning on the 16th. Okay, so
9 to? 10 to 1? Which we
10 to 1, I think, Donna, you're going to make it 10:30 or 11?
Or 11, okay.
You're 10:30?
I'm 10 or 11.
Oh, 10 and 11 are the lectures. They have free food, fantastic hot dogs if you like hot dogs, huh?
Good hot dogs. Oh, sure.
And they have free sodas and shots.
Prizes.
What's that?
They said prizes, like door prizes.
They do have door prizes, they'll give out gift certificates for your purchase that day. So it's a fun time there too. And you can listen to Donna and I speak. So if there's no more questions, thank you. Oh, you got one?
Just quick, sorry, do the coffee plants do well here? I love them.
Coffee plants do fantastic. We have time controlling them.
Huh?
Which
Once
coffee?
they,
Like the drinking
They're
coffee?
wild,
no, the wild coffee, the native coffee. And if you need some, I can get you a lot of babies.
They do well.
Yeah, I have to actually pull them as weeds because where I work, they come up like crazy.
One of my favorites. Well, that's
You had mentioned
Basically,
Wait a minute.
growing with those types of synthetic fertilizers, like when you're trying to eat food, does that reduce the nutritional value?
Fertilizing on food that you're going to eat. I would say when you're establishing your plants,
Yeah, they come back.
I would use an organic feed,
I mean, I'm talking trees.
and you can use organics right up to the day you feed them, as long as you're not using something that would be harmful, because there are people that use fresh cow manure. I want to try that right before you eat it. But anyway, you can use organics the full season, but if you're going to use something to establish it in the beginning that's non-organic, I would say just initially. Okay, no more questions? I'll be back in September.
Okay, so for everybody at home, watching online, we will put up the intermission little screen, and then we'll be back with our brief announcements, mostly a lot of what you've already talked about, but some other stuff too. And we are doing Plant of the Month. We're going back to that. So we have a volunteer to do Plant of the Month this month. The intermission will probably be a little bit longer because we also now have somebody to sell the plant table tickets, and we have somebody to sign in with. So if everybody who came and didn't sign in, please sign in. All right, thank you guys.
I have an empty slot. Where's my plant? Not just Saturday, coffee Saturday. And
And then we got this other lady in charge. And she would say she wanted to let me know. And there's no
Yes.
And she, I mean, honestly, it's long been in charge.
Oh, yeah.
Except I know that this other person. So we're.
Okay, good evening, everybody. If you can grab a seat again, that would be excellent. I just wanted to make a few announcements, the business announcements. One thing is the Citrus County Fair ended and we had some native plants entered, and Gail Taylor won Best of Show for her native plant in the native plant division. So congratulations to Gail. And then just as a reminder of some of the activities that are coming up, and we do have some sign-up sheets in the back for a few of them. We have the field trip at Half Moon on the 7th, so that's a couple of days away. We're kind of watching the weather on that. But if you want to sign up for that, so you get alerted if we cancel it, sign-up sheet is on the back. That is at 8:30 to meeting there at Half Moon, and then it'll probably run to noon. We have Barbara's Weeding Day at the IFAS Extension Office. That's on the 9th, so that's this Saturday, 9 to 11. If you can attend that or let Barbara know right now, that way we know people are coming. The 12th is our monthly iNaturalist field trip at the Coogee State Forest. That's a sign-up sheet's back there too. That usually starts around 9. The 15th, we have our plant sale distribution, which as of right now, it is still at Church Without Walls, but we are finding out if that's confirmed. But yeah, we definitely need volunteers for that. So if you haven't already talked to Sue about that and you're available on the 15th, we do shifts all through the day. You don't have to be there all day. And she's now put the sign-up sheet over there. So definitely sign up for that because we need volunteers for that desperately. And then the next day, this is next week again, the Anson Earth Day event, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Always awesome. We encourage you to come out. If you're a member, you get a discount on native plants, so bring your membership card. And you might get free stuff too. The 23rd is the Extension Earth Day in the garden with Barbara, so definitely come out. And I know you have one person right now that's helping you in the garden. Do you have other people that are?
I've only heard of one person coming on that day.
I'm coming.
Okay, Ben will be there.
All right, so yeah, if you want to help out and represent the chapter, it's nothing really that much, just being there and smiling and telling
You or Suze aren't gonna be there?
We're talking about your,
The 23rd.
oh, yeah, I thought we were, I saw about 16.
And then on the
16th,
27th, wrapping up Earth Day for Earth Month, we have an invasive plant removal at the Good Neighbor Trail in Brooksville. We've been doing this for about a year now. It's an inter-chapter thing. So a couple of our chapters are getting together and helping to pull invasive plants along this really gorgeous new brand new trail. But unfortunately, because they made gorgeous brand new trail, they brought in a bunch of invasive plants. So we're working on that. and you can get with me about that. And then for May, just to give you a heads up, normally we do an outdoor picnic kind of thing, but we're actually gonna have a potluck here on our normal meeting day. It's not a meeting. We're just gonna get together and have a potluck. That went really well for Christmas, so I think that'll work well for May too. And then we're gonna have a field trip in May, that would normally be our field trip for, that goes with the potluck. And then of course the conference, the FNPS conference is the 20th through the 22nd. If you haven't registered, get your registration in. They're doing it online again this year, and we have been asked if we can help coordinate some field trips around the conference, because traditionally it's a big event. You drive where the conference is held, and then you get field trips before, field trips afterwards, all the lectures. I've really been missing it the last couple of years. So we are going to be one of the chapters coordinating with Marion County to do a field trip or two, probably two, in this area. So that might be part of our monthly field trip, something extra, but definitely just want to remind you all the conference is coming up, and get your registrations in. You do that at fnps.org and register at the conference page. And then of course we try to do something during the summer, even though we're not having meetings. If anybody has any ideas of things they would like to do, they'd like to do as a group, sometimes you go and do nursery visits or whatever seems fun at the time. Indoor activities are always good ideas since it's hot. But if you have any ideas, bring them to our attention and we'll try to coordinate something. Then I'll remind you, the precedes are in the back. And if Steve is ready, we can move. Oh, wait, we've got a question. Hold on.
Two questions. On the 23rd, for the Earth Day, can somebody meet me here after 5 o'clock to get the tent and stuff? So who would that be?
Well, we'll have to coordinate that.
Somebody let me know.
Okay.
And are we having the potluck dinner at 7 o'clock or?
Usually we do it more like 6:30 or 6. I think that's the way we did it the last time. Had like a little game at 6 and then ate around 6:30. That'll come out in the next email, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that we will be having something. Because it's, first thing in the month. Good. Okay, so Steve has volunteered to do Plant of the Month, and we'll get back to that, so come on up.
All right. Okay.
We can start by passing this around. These are the flowers from coral honeysuckle. Okay. The plant of the month is coral honeysuckle. This is what the plant itself looks like. It's a vine. All right, we're going to go to the next slide. All right, so there's coral honeysuckle. It's typical plant. You've got red tubular flowers, which makes it very attractive for hummingbirds. The inside of these things, the flowers can be red or they can be yellow. There are some strange clones of this actually have completely yellow flowers. The interesting thing about coral honeysuckle is just before it normally has two opposite leaves like this. Before it flowers, it will produce this big oval leaf that's two leaves fused, and then from that fused leaf are the flower clusters. Okay. Coral sunhawker is flowering now. It will flower on and off almost all the way into the fall. And again, it is attractive to hummingbirds. The hummingbird in my yard does the routine. It does the tropical sage, and it goes to the firebush, then it goes to the coral honeysuckle, and then it goes to somebody else's yard. So they do that. It is a vine. Next slide. Well, okay, no, take it around. Okay, this is terrible. I'm still learning how to use a cell phone. They do have red berries. Okay, in this case, the berries have turned into raisins. Okay, they're drowned in black. They are good wildlife food. You can't grow this from seed, but for whatever reason, the critters in my yard apparently don't find this that attractive because they left them there and they sort of withered up. So they do, those flowers will go to clusters of little red juicy seeds. All right, go next one. Okay, it is a vine, it's gotta have something to crawl on, but as vines go, it's not particularly aggressive. In other words, it will grow on stuff without necessarily smothering it. Sometimes people refer to it as mailbox vine because people will put it around their mailbox, like post the mailbox over the mailbox. This was growing on somebody's fence here, but it does need the vine. It grows by twining, not by tendrils. But it usually is not too bad. Let's hit next slide. Okay, here's mine growing. At one time I had a trellis here that was leaned against a dead pine trunk. Well, the pine trunk fell over and there was a persimmon tree growing next to it. Now it's sort of growing on the persimmon tree, but it's not killing it. So it behaves itself as vines go. Okay, go to next slide. Okay, how you propagate this thing? Basically, any piece that touches the ground will start rooting, forming roots and start shooting. So you see where plants that touch the ground here are actually starting to root up and form new plants. You could probably root cuttings. If you just took cuttings and put them in a shady spot, it'd probably root from that. But oftentimes, if you look around, you'll find these little knobby nubs along the stem. They're starting to form roots, and you just take that part off and plant them. So they're really easy to grow from cuttings, or if you want to, anything that touches the ground will root. And anything that touches, some place that's fairly moist will start to root up as well. So they might, if you have a wet spot on the truss, they may try to root up there. Doesn't really have much in the way of pests. I mean, I'm finding that the oak caterpillars are eating them right now, but they're eating everything. So that's one thing. The only thing I've ever seen is that there is some sort of thrip or aphid insect that will attack it sometimes, and it'll make the growth all sort of twisted up and stunned, and it'll sort of stop growing for a while when it does that, and then it'll snap out after a while. But I found some sort of thrip will sometimes attack it, and that will distort the growth for a while and kind of slow down the growth. So it's a good native vine, good for wildlife, and it doesn't really, it doesn't really have a lot of problems. It doesn't cause you a lot of problems. It's not like some of the other vines where you have to keep whacking them back because they want to take over everything. This one will coexist with other plants much better than most. Okay, any questions?
Does it like sun or shade or?
It is really, it'll grow almost anywhere, okay? If you put it in the shade, you won't get a lot of flowers, okay? It'll grow in full sun, grow in partial shade, but you get better, the more light it gets. So, partial shade is fine, full sun is fine. If you grow in the shade, it will grow, but don't expect a lot of flowers. And they don't seem to be too particular as to soil either. I haven't really seen that. I guess they would. I haven't tried growing them in a flooded location, but other than that, they don't seem to be too particular as to soil type. All right, well, I'm done, and we have our main speaker.
Okay, can you turn the lights on real quick? Okay, so thank you, Steve. So this evening, we get to listen to Colleen Warner. She's a biologist with the Coochie State Forest. She's led several of our field trips, and she's always fun to go out with because she is such a plant person that it's like you get out in the dirt with her and you start learning all about native plants. So Colleen, if you're ready, I'm so pleased to be able to have you here tonight. Oh, actually, do you want to do that first?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, Colleen.
I'm sorry, we just need to,
All right, Sue, can you come up and help do the drawing?
Absolutely.
So, just to make sure that we can get this taken care of, we're gonna do the drawing for the plants. If you want to get your tickets out, I totally forgot about this.
All right, first one is 288232. 232, somebody's, there you go, Julia. All right, 236, check it, Julia, and see if that's you as well. 236.